Okay. Good morning, everyone. I thank you for the opportunity. I have to make one or two disclaimers before I start the talk. One is this is mostly towards writing grants to Indian funding agencies. It's not for funding agencies abroad because that's a different ball game. The second one is, this presentation is prepared for the junior faculties and the PG students. So if it is a repetition for the senior faculties, please bear with me. The scope of the talk is we are all passionate about patient care, and without research, actually, patient care cannot move so efficiently because you have to develop methodologies and treatment modalities for suitable for the particular population or particular group of patient. So research is very vital for it. The second is addressing a particular lacuna is crucial for the scientific discovery. For an example, I don't know, you may be having a lot of examples in the medical field. So one is, when they were doing gene amplification by PCR, they used to have human DNA polymerase. So, that optimal temperature is 37 degrees. So when you are heating the PCR of 90 degree, they will get degraded. So they will add the DNA again and again. So you have to open the system. So that was leading to contamination also. Then one fellow was in artesian spring and he thought if a bacterium is surviving in this thing, so that DNA will be useful for that. So he took that, Thermus aquaticus bacteria from the artesian springs, and then he isolated the polymerase from that. That became Taq polymerase, and that will survive even 94 degree, which we are using for separating the DNA strands. So, addressing a particular lacunae and the presence of mind will lead to a scientific discovery. The third one is so many research ideas. They will be fantastic ideas. If you are sitting, times you will see very good. I remember one day Dr. JP Mulil told one of our grants. He said that you are having a very good product, but your way of selling is not good. So because of poor presentation, you will lose that thing. Second one is a good research proposal might not even get reviewed if it lacks the grant requirements. See, the grant may be having certain requirements. If you are not fulfilling all, so your thing will not be sent for the review. Then one is a well-written proposal can fall short if the project isn't good fit for the grant call. For an example, if it is in a specific grant for maternal health, so you have to write a grant for particular thing. So you write a thing which is very remotely connected to it. It won't be shortlisted for the review. So when you are writing a proposal, it all starts with the question why. Why am I doing this work? So when you finalize the why, actually all the other things will flow from that why question. It ensures explaining your objective in a much more patient. For an example, you are writing a basic science grant addressing to a diagnostic thing, and then suddenly your clinical friend is coming and say that, hey, can you convert it to a clinical product or else in a diagnostic method? Now the perspective changes. When the why changes, your whole flow will change. So a pure diagnostic testing will become, a pure diagnostic modality will become a regular testing for the patient care. So why is very important to the thing. And then when you write a grant, most of the time we falter in the first few lines. When you read, NIH grant and all NIH grant, they won't allow you to write more than 6 pages. And that summary is very, very important. And when you read the summary, you decide whether the reviewer will decide whether I want to review this grant or not. So your first few lines are very, very important in that. And then when we review our grants fluid research, then most of the time the summary and abstract are are not written in the right manner. Actually, for a reviewer who don't know you, your caliber or your experience and all, he will see the grant through your summary and abstract. So the summary and abstract has to be, so most of the people will write the summary and abstract and they'll go and write the grant. Actually, you should do it the opposite man. You write the grant and then go and write a summary and abstract which will fit into the thing. You see, yesterday one grant came, they have written only a justification of the grant in the summary. Nothing about methodology and the expected outcome were mentioned in that. So those things are, they are not going to be reviewed in a positive manner. And then when you finalize your work plan, actually, you don't need to write a big grant. Actually, some of our grants, the methodology, last time one of our grant got funded, the methodology was only one paragraph. But we have spent considerable amount of time in explaining the thing, so that methodology didn't need much of explanation. So it was very straightforward. So the subsequent section will be set based on the why question which you are asking. And then the second thing you have to do is finding the right funding agency for you. So there are a government and private, and each funding agency will fund by a particular kind of grant. ICMR, mostly it is medical and public health. DST, it's medical and basic science. And DBT, Department of Biotechnology, mostly biomedical and biotechnology. SERB, the Science Engineering and Science Engineering Research Board. They mostly fund biomedical research. CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, they fund for basic science and biotech. And then DRDO, as many people will think that DRDO is not funding basic research. Actually, they do a lot of work on heat and cold physiology. After our soldiers are in Siachen and also they are working on a lot of heat and cold physiology. So they also fund research for cancer and all, and especially a lot of biomedical devices. One of my friend, he in the DRDO, he developed a biosensor for sensing gas, poisonous gas. Now they are trying to convert it into a biomedical device. So they will fund very easily. Even they will fund for the product development. And then of course we are having a lot of private philanthropic and CSR funds. Okay, so when you write a grant, there are some basics you have to remember. One is whether it is a government or private organization, we have to go through the requirement of the grant and your eligibility. When you are not eligible to apply for a grant, don't waste your time on that thing, because most of the time in India, they will look for an opportunity to reject the grant, not for accepting the grant, because every grant call, they will be having funding for 100, but they are receiving 1500 to 1600 projects. So, go through the requirements of the grant and your eligibility. Then second is meeting all the writing guidelines. So you may miss one thing. In our IRB, they will point it out. Oh, there you haven't filled this column, you fill it. There nobody will tell you. They will simply reject the grant and go. Then registering yourself and others in the website. Recently, one of our friends, she was having 6 collaborators and one registered, and then she was waiting for that person to register. 4 o'clock, the system got clogged with things, she couldn't submit the grant. So make sure that there are now ICMR and all is asking every co-investigator to register separately with a CV. So you make sure that it is name, and if it is a multi-investigator project, assign role for each, because you don't want duplication and you don't want waste of time. Sometimes there wouldn't be a flow in compiling the grant, so you assign the work for each investigator. If it is a multi-institutional project, share the work. Instead of duplicating the same thing. See, some of the grants, they will use so for an example, they are studying genetics, the instrument they have is different from yours, and at last you will be having problem in compiling the results. In those times, it's better, you take one part of work and send the other part of work to another agency. So that is how that has to be decided before. And then type of the study. If it is a clinical trial, you have to get lot of permissions. If it is a foreign funded one, you have to get clearance from ICMR. You have to get beforehand. And then budget limit. So there are many grants which are coming with budget grants. Startup grants, you can't go beyond 30 lakhs. Now ICMR, the general grant is 1.5 crores. So there is no point in writing a 2 crore grant for a 1.5 crore limit, because they are not going to increase even 1 rupee. Rather, they will look for an opportunity to decrease the fund, not increase the fund. And then when they are having 3-year limit, don't write a 5-year grant. Usually that will be a reason for the rejection. And I'll introduce certain terms in which the proposal are requested. One is the concept proposal. That is the easiest one to write. Usually it is 1 to 2 page. You are writing only the concept. You don't need a detailed methodology. You don't need a detailed literature search for this thing. You have to write only, this is my concept, research concept, this is how I am going to address. Actually, it is better even for the full research call, it is better to write a concept note for you to be clear about what you are asking for. It is called in other names letter of intent or expression of interest. So LOI or EOI, it's all same. It is it is good in one way, because you write, most of the time you won't do the concept note submission by the website. It is mostly by email. Once your concept is appealing, or once the concept is falling into the requested area, then they will ask you for a full proposal. So once your concept is accepted, you have crossed actually 50 to 60% of the well, because the competition will be very less when they are reviewing your full proposal. So then it's full proposal. Full proposal is usually in India, it is 20 pages. 20 pages, sometimes it may run into 60 pages also. So, you have to fulfill all the things, and then word limit you have to follow. And then there are some specific call. One is, a Northeast specific call is there. And then women specific grant is there. Startup grant, if you are a faculty assistant professor who is less than 2 years of experience, you can apply for the startup grant, where they are giving decent amount, 15 lakhs per year for 2 years. So 30 lakhs is good amount for then there are some fellowships are for the people who are coming to an institution first time, that will cover your salary also. For an example, Ramalingasamy Fellowship is giving you a salary of 1.2 lakhs. 1 lakh salary plus 20,000 HRA. So they are giving. So plus funding, special funding for research. So I think, the total fellowship amount is coming around, I think 1.2 crores in a year. Then there are some, entry-level fellowship in India Alliance fellowships are there. Senior fellowships are there. Dr. Vikram Matthew, he got back-to-back 2 grants. Each grant is 4 crores. 4 crores of 5 years. So these are the fellowships are coming with the salary, and the manpower is, you can employ, even an assistant professor or a scientist level position in this thing. So fellowships are also a type of grant where, not much of takers, but, those who are in it, but competition is also high. Okay. Then there is general call. These are the grants which are open throughout the year, but they have very low priority. When there is a call, for an example, child health, grants or child health grants on stem cell research, calls are having much higher chance of getting, but general calls are normally, it's high competition and a number of grants are more. And most of the time it goes by how much amount you are asking. You have written a very nice grant asking for 1 crore, and another person not so good grant, but he is asking only 20 lakhs. So usually the funding agency will think, okay, not much of money, so they will. There is a high chance that they will choose that the grant which is asking lesser money. Okay, so before you start the grant, there are certain questions you should ask. One is, what will your research accomplish? Second is, who directly benefits from the outcome of your research? Like I said, when you say, I am trying to prove a basic science question, but I am trying to address a clinical problem. Addressing the clinical problem will score much higher than asking a basic question. So who directly benefits your outcome of the project, and then choose the appropriate audience for the thing. Because when I am writing a grant to a funding agency which is predominantly with basic science people, so better to spend on or else but it's better to speak the language which they understand. But if you are writing to ICMR and all, usually they will expect you to have a clinical angle to your project, because the project will be predominantly reviewed by clinicians. So the third one is, what are your credentials? If you are a new researcher, please have team members, because most of the time they will assess you on three things. One is how many projects you have successfully finished. That's number one. Second is what are your publications, and then the third one is the institute which you are affiliated to. So these are the three main criteria the reviewers will look for. So if you are a new researcher talking about something new or else anything, please have team member, preferably an experienced person as a co-PA, because they may not know you, but they may know the other person. So that tilt the balance to your favor. Then will it be done within the budget and time limit? So when you are writing the first grant, the problem is you will be so ambitious to have lot of objectives, and the funding limit will be 30 lakhs or even 50 lakhs. You wouldn't accomplish all those things, but in enthusiasm you will write, and then you will get stuck in the final presentation. Most of the time they will expect you to fulfill all the objectives of the grant when you submit the final report. And then is my institute or organization eligible to get this funding? In government funding, 60% of the funding goes to government institutes. Only 40% comes to the private institutes. Is my study significant in the current context? For example, actually, we submitted one concept note to ICMR. We have scored 8.2 on a 10-point scale, which was very high. But that time they gave us only 1 month to submit the full proposal. We couldn't, because we had to clear IRB before that. We couldn't do that thing. The next year, the same proposal was not even shortlisted, because that context was outdated by the time, or else somebody else have taken up the work. I know in one another department, I was part of that work. They told, this is a well-written proposal, but ICMR has already funded a similar type of research. We cannot fund this project. That was the note they have sent for rejection. So, current context is very, very important. We cannot bring outdated things and ask for funding. And how clearly and logically you can present your plan. So, work plan, actually very important. Now, most of the funding agencies are looking for a flow chart or some kind of picturesque explanation of your work plan. That's very important, because they need not go through all the you must have written some 10 to 15 methodologies. They need not go through all they have to see is that picture, and then they would understand the work. And then starting the protocol. First is find the right agency according to your call, and then write call and a suitable title. Then write a preliminary proposal or a concept note for yourself. Even if it is not required, you write a concept note, start to finish, and especially for the multi-investigator one. Identify the key articles for your research question and methodology, because if you see DBT and all, they will ask a question in the thing, origin of the proposal. So in origin of the proposal, you have to quote 3-4 articles from which your idea is originated. So that is the origin of your proposal. So, if you are writing about, TB meningitis, for an example, you have to, logically place certain articles, say, for an example, TB burden in India, and then the amount of, how much percentage people are having that thing. And then you come to the paper where, it shows a lacunae. So that lacunae is the origin of your proposal. So those things you have to identify, and you have to think. And the methodology, they will expect you to quote papers, because most of the time when I review the project, I will go back and see whether the methodology they have written was exactly presented in the paper. So that is very important. And then make sure application fits each funding agency. See, each funding agency has a criteria and a way of writing. So even my grant was rejected by one funding agency. I'm presenting it to you. You have to change certain paragraphs and certain areas to fit into the new criteria. So, you cannot just copy and paste everything and expecting them to fund your project. Be diligent in following funding agencies' writing guidelines, including the word limit, because days they used to, we used to attach the grant in a PDF format. Now they are asking you to copy and paste. Even one word it is not allowing. ICMR is so funny. 300 word means including space. So most of the time we count, excluding space, and then your thing cannot be pasted in that column. Then you have to, most of the time we will do the submission on the last day. And imagine you are cutting from 350 words to 300 words. It's very difficult in the last moment. So please, word limit and all, be aware of the word limit and do that. Identify the lacunae or novelty and how your personal experience or expertise will help. So this actually, most of the time, the grants, our Indian grants, not many people mention about it. See, when you are forming a team, you have to say, this is the problem, and I am having that expertise to address the thing. So, when you mention, assign a role for each investigators, now, SERB is asking, if you are having 10 co-investigators, they will ask what each co-investigator will do. So you have to assign a role for them. So those are those things you have to decide before starting the proposal. And then expected outcome and future directions. So when it is expected outcome, sometimes you are working on a grant. Say for an example, you are developing a peculiar stem cell for therapy. Don't make a statement that oh, this is going to be the future treatment modality for this thing. Now, until it is proven, then. So expected outcome, and then always tell that thing. So these things will come under the future direction. And when you are writing your expected outcome and future direction, actually you are laying platform for the next grant. When you're saying, I will address up to this point in this grant, and this is where I want to go. So you can make it as a justification for the next grant. So what are the main aspects of your proposal? Title. How do you want to have the title? Short or long? Which one will be ideal? Actually, there is nothing called, except there are some funding agencies gives a word limit to the title also. Other than that, there is no limit. You should have only a short title or long title. Actually, I have taken the liberty to show two of the title we have given. One is this is the fund we have approved by ICMR for funding. So, study of genetic and biochemical risk in Indian patients with symptomatic intracranial atherosclerotic disease. Actually, it's a very simple title, very straightforward. And see this title, this we have submitted. I have taken it without Dr. Sanjit's permission. Anyway, non-invasive neuromodulation using combined TMS and TDCS in patients following an anterior circulation ischemic stroke, a randomized control trial. So it's a very long trial, but see what and all it is conveying. The title is conveying it's a RCT, and then actually that call was having some subheadings. This, I think this proposal was submitted under the title neuroplasticity. So everything is, and so I am going to conduct an RCT, and it is under the subheading of neuroplasticity, and then the first two lines of your is actually your work. So this is projecting yourself to fit into a particular criteria. So nothing is wrong whether you are saying simply or else you are saying in a complicated manner. It doesn't matter, but it should convey your work very clearly to the funding agency as well as the reviewers. And then statement of the problem, or as I mentioned, your abstract or project summary, actually that's the most read section in any grant. Because the busy people, when they read the abstract section, they will decide whether they will review the grant positive or negative. 90% of the time, by reading your summary, they will decide what score they would give also. So aims and objectives. What does this project, see, there is a confusion about the aims and objective. Actually, aim is the one after 3 years, what you want to achieve through this grant. Most of the time, aims are either 1 or 2. Objectives are the means of achieving that goal. So objectives, usually more than one objectives to reach one aim. So you have to write very clearly. It is just like writing a vision statement and mission statement. Mission statements are objectives, and vision statement is the aim. So after 3 years, where I want to reach, and the means of achieving it is the objectives. And then clear methodology, and nowadays almost all the funding agents you to do a data analysis plan. Because recently we submitted and we presented one closure report for one project. Dr. Sanjit was also part of the thing. They asked very clearly about the power calculation and all, the statistics. So you have to give a clear data analysis and clear methodology plan. And then there are certain funding agencies, they will allow, if my plan A is not working, I will switch over to an alternate methodology. That is also acceptable. But it is better to mention that thing in the grant writing itself, or else you have to get the permission of the funding agency in the middle of your grant to change the methodology. So it is better initially itself, if this methodology is not working, I will switch over to this methodology. Okay, limitations and future direction. I already told you, when the grant is having some limitation, say for an example, you are conducting a study sitting in Vellore, don't say the thing they are representing the whole India. So you say the thing, my study is limited to this population, and in future we may expand the study to other populations. So very clear about the limitation. And then I'll give you some tips of writing the grant. Start early and be organized. If those who visited US, the NIH grant writing starts 6 months before the deadline. 6 months before the deadline, they will assign the roles. Actually, I was part of one NIH grant 2 years back. They finalized the draft 2 months before the deadline. So, you have to start early and you have to be organized in the thing. And then do your research, read books, update yourself in the field. Because in one of my grants, that person very clearly told, this methodology is outdated now. Last year, there was an article which is, which said this methodology is not useful for this thing. So the reviewers are well versed in that subject. So we have to be careful and we have to do thorough research. Mention about your publications and preliminary data. See, most of the time people will think that when I don't have any research work, I don't have preliminary data. It's not like that. Say for an example, if you are writing a grant on stroke, you see CMC is seeing this many patients and this many, see that is preliminary data. And you are saying, oh, we have a database of a particular disease and we have enrolled near about 500 patients in the database. That's your preliminary data. Always mention your preliminary data because that will make sure that you are, you are one step ahead of others. Now, I know one grant they have written, because I reviewed the grant, and they have written very clearly, since they have accumulated the samples already for that work, they decided to fund that project. They have collected some 700 samples on particular condition. So they said that, okay, they are having the samples, we'll fund it. So then mention about your publications, and you have to say, if you are having a team, say for an example, you are having a team of a neuroimmunologist or someone, you mention that, we are having, this team member who can handle this thing. Or here I'm having a team member who can address, stem cell related problems. He is an expert in iPSC, something. Now, those things you have to mention and have an actionable plan. See, when it is funded, most of the time people will write grant. Once it is funded, they will be running, oh, what should I do now? Have a plan, beforehand, because especially if it is a multi-institutional, you should have a minimum plan, or else when the first year gets over, you would be ready with your data, your counterpart is not ready. Ultimately, you will not get your extension till you submit the data from all the centers. So, you have to get, and then pitching a rough idea with potential benefit, not enough in many grants, in US, but it is not in many grants, but there are certain grants which, which encourages this thing. One is idea grant. In US, you can give a crazy idea supported by minimal publications. They will fund it. In DST, something some one grant is called high risk and high reward. I'm not promising this is a high risk funding, but if I crack it, it's a high reward one. So there are some grants earmarked for that, but not all. Most of the grants will expect you to support it with publications. And then have a realistic time plan. When your patient recruitment itself will take 3 years, don't say the thing, I will finish this number of patients in 2 years' time. Right manpower, equipment, and so this is one of the thing, most of the grants you don't find people asking for manpower, but manpower is good to ask when you are submitting an external grant, because you will ensure even you are there or not, your work will continue, and then you are getting, even you don't need a person or a nurse for a project, but the nerds can be used in other projects, other studies you are having, or else you can use them for preliminary data gathering, and then equipment, when you are asking for equipment, ask the right equipment, and you can even negotiate with the funding agency. I'll come to the thing later. And then consumable, and then team with right expertise. Oh, he is my friend, I want him to be part of grant. Don't do that when that person is not going to play a role. Okay, when you are not sure, please contact an experienced person. See, when you don't know how to write the grant or how to go about it, please send. And in CMC, IRB is doing that part very well. Not many institutes are having that facility, because in IRB say, oh, this is not written nicely, and this you will run into problems if you commit to this thing. So that's one thing. You have talk to an experienced person, or you write to the funding agency. You most of the time they will have one person assigned from each unit to handle the queries. So you ask them and then call the grant agency to discuss. Of course, some of the funding agencies, they don't take calls, but email they usually respond. And then when they are asking for a particular area, you write this. This will come in handy when you are writing a proposal to this, what is a thing, some Parkinson disease society. They will have research grant, so you have to write something on Parkinson disease. So you have your proposal should be closely aligned to their strategic goals. And this, having a renowned person doesn't ensure success, but develop a soft corner in reviewing. So, if you are writing a grant and the thing, don't think that, having a person, oh, that person is not develop a soft corner for the thing. See, the so-and-so is also part of the grant. So it certainly develops a soft corner while reviewing. And this quote, I got it from, I think if you are not absolutely spot on with what they are looking for, it may not be worth your time in writing the grant. I don't agree with that when it is coming to concept proposal, because concept proposal, you cannot explain everything very clearly. You are giving a general idea. Actually, when you are committing or when you are writing a concept note, sometimes your full proposal may be entirely different. So, I am not very clear about that thing, but if it is a concept note, please go ahead with it. Budget may be important, especially if it is the first proposal, because when they are writing the first proposal, the major thing is their capability to anticipate the expenditure is very less. So most of the time they'll say, okay, today I buy this kit for 40,000 rupees, so they will budget it for 40,000. But next year the GST will change or something else will change, so that kit will become 50,000 or 60,000. So you have to write the budget very carefully. You have to anticipate after 2 years how much the expenditure will go up. So those things you have to anticipate, especially in equipments. When you are budgeting, actually, I know one department who got the full amount for that particular thing, but by the time COVID came, that cost went up 2 times. So they were lucky enough to get half of the funding from their own department to get that equipment. So you have to be very careful while you are writing the budget. When you are writing the budget also, there are certain areas where you can negotiate. For an example, okay, I think and that will come in this. Okay, when you are getting a reviewer's comments, sometimes they may say, oh, in this there is nothing new. But the good sign is, if the funding agency is sending you the comments of the reviewers, they are still having soft corner for you. Because usually it goes to 2 or 3 reviewers. One reviewer will reject it, or other 2 reviewers will say the thing, consider it with major modification or minor modification. Still, if they send you the comments, actually, you have to respond. So the reviewer may say, oh, this grant is not good for funding. But if they are sending you the comments, it is still under consideration. Unless until they say explicitly, no, we cannot fund you, your grant is not shortlisted, it's still under consideration. So address each and every comment and suggestion. Be polite even when you don't agree with the comment. See, you are a clinical person, your comment, your project may be reviewed by a basic science person, but don't say the thing, oh, you don't understand these things. Be polite when you are addressing the comment. Incorporate and highlight the modifications you have made in the next version. In case of budget cutting, feasibility of fulfilling. This let me dwell a little more on this thing. The funding agency may say, oh, your fund is, your grant is good, but we cannot fund you 1 crore. We will give you only 70 lakhs. You carefully do the thing and say where and all I can make the grant. If I'm not going to fulfill all the objectives of the grant within the fund, it is better to inform before you get the money. Very clearly, that funding limit, I have to sacrifice this particular objectives to fulfill, or else to do the work within the budget. So you have to be careful, and feasibility of fulfilling all the objectives to be explained. You have to write back to the funding agency and everything. And then equipment not sanctioned, can I do the work without it? So you are asking for an equipment, and then funding agency say no, we can't fund. Can you do the work without that thing? So can you make arrangements? If it is not going to be feasible, write to them back and say that without that equipment I cannot do that work. This equipment is not available in my thing. Say for an example, this flow cytometry experiment and all, you have to take the blood and do the cell sorting immediately. If the thing is available after 1 hour of traveling, you cannot run that thing. So those things you have to be very clear about. Do you have time to negotiate with the funding agency, or need to start immediately? There are certain grants you want to start immediately. There are certain grants you will say, I will spend some more time in negotiating with them. For an example, one department has asked for some 2.5 lakhs for a server, computer server. And then she sanctioned them only 50,000 rupees for one laptop. So they don't need laptop. So they are writing back and they say that we don't want a laptop, we want only a server. So they are not in dire need of the thing. So they are negotiating. Now the funding agency has taken it to the finance section for consideration. So they may or they may not get. So there are certain things you can I'll start it after 3 months, let me negotiate. There are certain things you have to start immediately, then go for it. Most proposal end in rejection. In fact, actually they are saying 80 to 90% of proposal end in rejection. So what you will do, carefully read the reason, modify it for the next funding agency. That's the only option we have. So some of the funding agency will give you nice reasons for rejecting. Some people, I know one grant was rejected with a thing over ambitious. So then only I realized, being over ambitious is a crime in India. Okay. But there are some funding agency will give you very good reason. Once they just rejected my grant, I wrote to them and I got them. I asked them, what are the comments the reviewers have given for rejecting? They send me the comments. So based on the thing, where we modified the grant and we have submitted it to some other funding agency. So these are the things, I hope this has helped. And now you have got the funding. There are problems in running a grant. For an example, collaboration. So you were committed for 50 patients in a day, in your clinical collaborator is not giving the thing because they are having so many other things in their mind than your grant. So what you did, so periodically remind them, and then I usually have the thing, 9th month itself I start testing people for the first year report. Then only you will get everything in a month's time and then collate everything and submit. Now funding agencies are strict. Unless until you give the year-wise report, they are not going to release the next year funding. So collaboration has its own problems, and if it is a multi-institutional collaboration, and that's another big pain. And if it is for collaborating with a government institute, my God, each page move in snail space. So to get one financial statement signed from AIMS, it usually takes 15 days. So those things and all, you have to be aware of. And then the other issue is medical and non-medical. Why I'm saying is, one will speak French and another will speak English. So you have to come to the thing, because for one person, particular aspect will be more important. The other person, no, this is more important. So you have to come to a common ground. Thank God in CMC, it's not very rampant. So that is another problem you will be facing. Then support from the institution. you would have committed and you would have asked a collaborator or else some other department, can I use your equipment for this thing? They'll say yes. And then by the time when you get money, the head of the department will change and this new person will not allow you to use that. So these are the problems while running the grant you will face. The one is annual report and presentations. So this is actually you have to be on time. Now DBT and DST are bringing in a new system called zero balance account. You must have received the mail from the thing. Zero balance account means you have to bring the balance to zero, then only they will fund the next year thing. So whatever you are asking, if you are leaving any balance there, that so for that you have to make a plan and then submit the report and make some of the funding agency will ask you to make presentations every year. So and then changing government regulation, like I said, suddenly they will say this is I faced problem when GST was introduced, because till the time I was paying only 5% tax on each item I buy, and suddenly from 28%, from 6% to 28%, the cost went up. So you have to you have to, even when there is a change in regulation, you have to adjust your grant requirement accordingly. So hope that will help you, and anyway I'm happy to answer any questions.